Apologies, I've had Claire Humbard is the only apology I've got. Is that? That's fine. Declarations of interest. Oh, and sorry, and Neil. Neil's on jury service, so that's why he's not here today. So agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? No? Craig?
So I'm director of Gwella, so I'll step out.
Just a bit of advice off Gareth, really, on this one. Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 11, proposed Glyndŵr National Park. I suggested a part was added to this park, and it was accepted. Does that give me any kind of interest?
No, Leader. The public at large were consulted on this. The public at large had the opportunity to respond, and therefore Councillor Banks shares his interest with the majority of taxpayers in his ward. I'm sure the majority didn't respond, but he shares his interest. You know, it was a public consultation. Of course, he's been consulted. He lives within the area. So, yeah.
Councillor Richard Jones?
The same as the other day.
Thank you. Councillor Ted Palmer?
Item 7, I'm a council tenant.
So that's personal interest only, Chair.
Okay, then.
Chair, sorry, what level of interest was Councillor Jones declaring as a director? You are. Oh, right. You are our appointee to the board, are you not?
Yes.
It means it's just a personal interest unless we're debating planning applications.
Thank you for that clarification, Gareth. If we go to agenda item 3, the minutes of the 14th of October, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15, page 16, page 17. Any questions on the minutes? No. Have we got a mover for the minutes? Councillor Ted Palmer, seconded by Councillor Glyn Banks. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 4, urgent matters agreed by the chair. I have not received any.
There was going to be an item from social services.
Craig, is that? Is that?
Sorry, Chair, I just called out. I was doing an email. So could you repeat? Yes, I've got one from social services. Do you want me to deal with that now? It's a part 2 item.
So if we go agenda item 5, capital strategy, Councillor Paul Johnson.
Chair, Stephen Kennett, capital strategy 2026-27. We've got a run now here. Thank you. Capital strategy 2026-27 to 2028-29. So yeah. Stephen Cabinet, I'm pleased to introduce agenda item 5, the capital strategy. The strategy sets out how we invest in Flintshires infrastructure and public assets at a time when economic uncertainty means every capital decision must be well judged. It provides a framework that ensures every pound invested works for our communities and supports services that residents rely on. Over the next 3 years, the combined capital programme totals 186 million. This includes council fund allocations of 17.2 million, 43.6 million and 48.4 million, alongside the housing revenue allocations of 27.9 million, 24.4 million and 24.8 million. These are significant commitments made against inflationary pressures for materials, labour and borrowing costs. Despite those pressures, this strategy is grounded in prudence and purpose. Our capital finance requirement is forecast to rise to around 472 million by 2028-29, and borrowing remains within affordable levels throughout. Borrowing isn't an easy option, I want to go and say. It's a conscious decision made knowing the consequences for revenue budgets. This strategy guides how we prioritise investments in schools, roads and compliance, ICT, community resilience and council housing. These are assets that underpin people's daily lives and help us maintain statutory services. Even in tight financial times, we are committing ourselves to our communities through smart, targeted capital investment. But the strategy is ultimately about people. It's there to ensure that homes are safe, schools are modern, communities are supported and essential infrastructure is resilient. Our focus isn't just on assets, it's on people, homes, schools and keeping Flintshire strong for future generations. We continue strengthening our approach to prioritisation, ensuring each scheme is tested for need, deliverability and long-term impact. We're actively managing inflationary and supply chain risks, strengthening gateway controls and improving long-term planning between services and finance. Leader in Cabinet, this strategy gives us the confidence to invest responsibly, protect our long-term resilience and support growth and wellbeing across Flintshire. I want to thank the officers for their professionalism and clarity in preparing the document, and I'll just pass them over to Chris Taylor to say if he's, because I'm sure he has some extra words to go and say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Johnson. So, as explained, the strategy explains the key needs, its aims and strategic intent. There's very little change from what was presented in the report last year. However, the potential indicators have been updated. For example, Table 1 shows the planned capital expenditure, with Table 2 showing how this will be funded in the next financial year. Table 8 is the other ratio to mention, as it advises of the net financing costs compared with the council's overall annual budget. And this indicates that we're not borrowing on an unsustainable basis. And you'll see just a marginal movement year on year, suggesting that borrowing costs are not significantly increasing year on year. So we've got nothing of concern from that side there. And just to point out, this report will be going to full council on the 3rd of December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay. Cabinet is asked to 1, approve the capital strategy for 26-27, 28-29, including the approach to affordability, prioritisation and governance. 2, to note the prudential indicators and confirm compliance with the Prudential Code. 3, approve the framework for managing inflationary and borrowing pressures across the capital programme. And 4, to recommend the strategy to Council for adoption as part of the annual budget setting process. I move.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ted Palmer, all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 6, capital programme. Councillor Johnson, over to you.
Thank you there. Capital programme. Leader in Cabinet, I'm pleased to introduce the capital programme for 26-27 to 28-29. This programme sets out how we will deliver the investments identified in the capital strategy, turning long-term priorities into deliverable, costed and well-governed projects. It ensures our capital ambitions are aligned with affordability, capacity and real-world deliverability. Over the 3 years ahead, the programme outlines a combined investment of 186 million, including council fund allocations, as I mentioned in the strategy. This level of investment demonstrates confidence, but also careful judgment at a time when construction costs, supply chain risks and interest rates cause lasting financial pressures on us. The programme prioritises essential statutory and regulatory commitments. For example, 1.6 million per year for disabled facilities grants, continual compliance and safety upgrades across our estates, targeted highways improvements totaling 5 million. These are the foundations that support independence, mobility and service quality. And even in tight financial times, smart targeted investment projects protect the services people in this county rely on every day. The programme also supports the ambitions in our council plan, from modernising schools to progressing key regeneration and resilience schemes. These projects underpin the everyday experience of residents, safe classrooms, reliable roads, digitally competent public services and housing that meets modern standards. The wider economic picture remains challenging, however, and the programme reflects those realities. Tender prices, inflation and labour costs continue to place pressure upon project delivery. That is why our approach emphasises strong governance, gateway controls and early risk escalation. Good capital management isn't about building more, it's about building better, stronger and sustainably. As borrowing requirements increase, affordability remains central to decision making. Every scheme in this programme has been tested for need, deliverability and long-term impact. A well-governed capital programme protects both today's investments and tomorrow's budgets. Leader and Cabinet, this programme is a disciplined, realistic and community-focused plan. It supports service delivery, strengthens our infrastructure and gives us confidence that every investment decision is sound. I want to thank the officers again for their rigour and clarity in pulling together such a complicated programme in such a difficult climate. Again, I'll pass over to the officers for any, Chris, for any further comments you'd like to make on this.
No, thanks, Councillor Johnson. Yeah, like you said, there's a number of schemes ranged across our statutory and regulatory requirements, our retained assets and investments as well, which is spread across the council across a number of years. The programme set in a surplus over the 3 years of 240,000. And again, just to point out, it will go into County Council alongside the capital strategy on the 3rd of December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chris. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. The recommendations are 1, to approve the capital programme 26-27 to 28-29, including the allocations set out for each year. 2, to note the funding assumptions, including the general capital grant, supported borrowing and specific grants. 3, endorse the prioritisation of statutory and essential schemes, including DFGs and core infrastructure. 4, approve the governance and risk management arrangements, including gateway controls and monitoring. And 5, to recommend the programme to Council for final adoption alongside the annual budget. I move the report.
Any questions at all? Been moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Palmer. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 7, housing revenue account. Councillor Helen Brown.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of the report is to present for consideration the draft housing revenue account, 30-year financial business plan and proposed HRA budget for 26-27. The HRA is required to produce a business plan, and it is also a ring-fence service, and it must be self-financing and not subsidised by the council. 1.04 of the report describes the HRA pressures and efficiencies. 1.05 is the capital programme. The total proposed capital programme for 26-27 is just over 27 million, summarised in Appendice B. WHQS 2023, a total of 15 million has been allocated for WHQS 2 and decarbonisation. Consultation with tenants and members is underway on the new 10-year programme for decarb and achieving the new WHQS standards. A programme is being completed detailing work streams, areas of work and costs. Stock condition surveys are being undertaken, which will inform the categories of investments in works which are required to achieve the new and very ambitious standards set by Welsh Government. A total of 1.122 million has been allocated for the DFGs. The service is customer driven and can be volatile depending on customer needs. 4 million a regeneration budget was approved in 25-26 for work across the council housing stock, and there are several pipeline schemes for consideration, including the sheltered housing review and delivery of the homelessness strategy. In September 2025, Welsh Government put in place a new 10-year rent and service charge standard, which is designed to ensure that social housing remains affordable, high quality and responsive to the needs of our communities. The new standard will come into force April 2026. There are 6 recommendations. The first one is to consider the HRA budget for 26-27 as set out in the report, to consider the proposed minimum rent increase of 4.3%, to consider a garage rent increase of 4.3%, to consider the increase in service charges to full cost recovery, to consider the pressures and efficiencies set out in Appendix A, and to consider the proposed HRA capital programme for 26-27 as set out in Appendix B. This report did go to housing scrutiny last week. The council did not raise any the committee, did not raise any objections to the proposals outlined within the report. Questions and concerns were raised regarding the funding required to meet the Welsh Housing Quality Standard 2 and how this could be met. Assurances were given and are given around the funding requirements being raised by both members and by officers and elected members at Welsh Government meetings, with further assurance given that there would be no request forthcoming for the council to borrow the 200 million required. And that amount, the 200 million, is required for decarbonisation, and that is very ambitious. Okay. We'll move the report.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of things really, that while affordability for our contract holders is should always be an important consideration, without the increase of 4.3%, you know, for every 1% reduction, we'd need to find a further £400,000 worth of efficiencies every year over the life of the plan. But the funding is important, and as Councillor Brown has just alluded to, in terms of the delivery of WHQS, which is very ambitious, and currently there's very little information coming from Welsh Government as to how we're going to fund that. You know, increasing our rents will enable us to use those additional funds to make sure that our properties are more energy efficient, and in doing so also reduce the costs, the utility costs for our tenants. There are some commitments within the rent policy, some of which have been in there now for a few years, but that continued commitment not to evict due to financial hardship, where tenants do engage with us as a landlord, that we need to continue to provide targeted support to those who experience financial hardship. And a couple of years ago, we did set aside some funding within the HRA to provide that financial support when required, and there is a balance on that account. And that we continue to engage with tenants when setting rent levels. So we did the STAR survey, which we reported last month to this committee, and we do meet with the Tenants Federation when talking about rent increases, and that we commit to working with Welsh Government regarding transparency. So I think it's just that, you know, that we do continue to work with our tenants when increasing their rent, and generally, you know, when we meet with Tenants Federation, they are positive about the work that we're doing. I suppose the only other thing to mention is the reserves. That the minimum level of reserves that we can hold is 3%. However, we believe that it continues to be prudent to move earmark reserves to 7% due to the level of financial risk that we still face, and that includes increased borrowing levels and increasing costs due to the volatility of the economy. So they said we want to maintain that minimum level of reserves. We do, however, continue to work on the capital programme, and there is a further report to come through this committee. And previously we have committed to considering increasing our voids budget to bring more accommodation back into use. So when the further report comes through, you'll see some changes to the capital programme. Thank you.
Rachel, you've got nothing to add? No, thank you. Well, if we've got any questions at all? No? Councillor Paul Johnson.
Thank you. As my name's on the report, and I'd like to second the report if that's okay. But I do believe that the HRA remains one of our strongest tools for delivering safe, warm and affordable homes across Flintshire. As was mentioned, that this is a ring fence fund with a clear purpose. I think if anybody reading the report will show how responsibly and effectively that budget is being managed. Tying in to what I was saying earlier, this programme continues to invest in the fabric of our existing stock, in energy efficiency, in modernisation and in delivering new council homes for local families. I think this council strongly believes that a secure and decent home is a foundation on which people build their lives, and I believe that sits at the core of this budget. Although there are challenges in construction costs and borrowing pressures that are remaining, the HRA is stable, sustainable and forward-looking. In Flintshire, I think we've got to commit ourselves to saying that in Flintshire, social housing is more than bricks and mortar. It's a public good that improves lives. So I think this report shows the service is managing pressures well, it's planning responsibly and is continuing to deliver for tenants, and I am delighted to support this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. It's been moved by Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 8, the housing strategy 25 to 30. Councillor Helen Brown.
Thank you. The housing strategy 25 to 2030, the right type of home in the right location for the right people, built upon the previous Flintshire housing strategy and action plan from 2019 to 2024. The draft strategy was approved for consultation by Cabinet on July the 15th of July 2025. The draft housing strategy 25 to 30 was made available under consultation and engagement section of the council's website, providing an opportunity for residents, stakeholders and other interest parties to give feedback. The consultation ran from September to October. Although not a statutory consultation, the process included engagement via the consultation engagement hub on the council's website, direct contact via email within the council's key strategic partners, and support with Connects offices for those who were unable to complete the consultation online. Responses have been collated and reviewed, and a summary of findings are detailed within the report. The refresh strategy highlights 5 key strategic priorities. Priority 1, increase supply to provide the right type of homes in the right location. Priority 2, work to prevent and reduce homelessness, reducing the reliance on the use of emergency and temporary accommodation. Priority 3, provide support to ensure people live and remain in the right type of home, including specialist provision. Priority 5, develop and invest in affordable housing and social housing to improve the quality and sustainability of homes. And priority 5, make best use of existing stock and ensuring the mix of dwellings meets demand while ensuring the long-term sustainability of our communities. And if you go to 1.15 of the report, some of the feedback and the 3 themes include infrastructure and public services, nature and biodiversity, and the need for a more balanced approach that rural as well as urban areas are taken into consideration. Although the issues raised in relation to infrastructure and public services and nature and biodiversity were implicit in the strategy, direct reference is now made to these issues. The strategy has been updated to reflect this. The needs of rural communities and the need for a more balanced approach so that the rural as well as urban areas are taken into consideration is now better reflected in the strategy. These will be addressed via the review of SARF when the local housing market assessment is refreshed in 27-28, and where appropriate, the commissioning of rural housing needs survey. The strategy has also been updated to reflect the feedback. The committee did not raise any objections to the proposed housing strategy, and the achievements of the previous strategy were highlighted by the committee, specifically that between 2019-2020 and 24-25, that 93 empty homes have been brought back into use across the county, which have been enabled through the Houses into Homes loans, tracking down existing owners, use of enforcement action, and provision of other assistance to owners. There are 2 recommendations. One is to note the strategy feedback consultation feedback, and 2, to approve the draft housing strategy 25 to 30. I'll move the report. Thank you.
Councillor Brown, any questions at all? Councillor Richard Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Not really a question, but I just want to make a point about the connection between the housing strategy and other policies that we have, especially the LDP. So just reading out pretty much around 25 to 25% of respondents noted the need for wider provision in addition to the development of new housing. This included access to health services, education, transport links, and waste management. The strategy was produced on the premise that it took into account existing policies and strategies and did not sit in isolation. I think that's an important point to make. A lot of these are cross-cutting themes within the housing strategy and actually affect things or things that have been questioned, like transport, roads, affordable housing. All these things come up within the housing strategy. I think it's just worthwhile making that point. Thank you, Chair. But I'm happy to second the report.
Been proposed and seconded. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Agenda item 9. Adoption of housing supplementary planning guidance. Councillor Brown, are you taking this one? Oh, sorry, Councillor Richard Jones.
Item 9, the adoption of housing strategic planning guidance. The council is required to provide a suite of SPG notes that assist applicants wanting to make a planning application in order that they have further specific detail other than the LDP guidance. The role of SPG is to provide that additional detail and explanation to support the LDP policies. It's important to note that provided that an SPG is in line with the LDP and subject to consultation and has been formally adopted by the council, then it may be afforded weight or material consideration in the determining of planning applications. This particular SPG addresses the issue of affordable housing. The SPG was endorsed for consultation in March 2024 and subsequently further endorsed at the end of that consultation with some minor changes through Planning Strategy Group, Environment and Economy Scrutiny, and now before you today. During the consultation, a significant number of representations were made on the draft SPG that included RSLs, or registered housing providers, Housing Building Federation, developers, town and community councils, and members of the public. The level of representation shows public interest in the subject matter and a desire to participate in the formation of guidance for affordable housing. The Economy and Environment Scrutiny was particularly interested in the pepper potting approach to developments where affordable housing is included amongst market housing, which is seen as good practice. The evolution of making properties tenure blind allows development to consider clustering of affordable housing, although that would be part of the planning LPA's consideration in determining any application. The responses, comments and reasoning in relation to the consultation is provided in Appendix 6 of the report. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation that affordable housing SPG is adopted as SPG and made available for inspection on the council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions on it? David, do you want to add anything to that, or are you happy with it?
Thank you, Chair. No, only to thank the work of the team and the planning team and the planning strategy group in producing the document. Thank you, Chair.
David? Been moved by Councillor Richard Jones, seconded by Councillor Ted Palmer. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 10, retention of local facilities and planning guidance. Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So a similar item as far as supplementary planning guidance goes. So item 10 is the retention of local facilities as a supplementary planning guidance for that. The council again is required to provide a suite of SPG notes to assist applicants wanting to make planning applications in order that they have further specific detail other than the LDP guidance. The role of SPG is to provide that additional detail and explanation to support LDP policies. It's important to note that provided that an SPG is in line with the LDP and has been subject to consultation and formally adopted by the council, then it may be afforded weight as a material consideration in the determining of planning applications. This particular supplementary planning guidance addresses the issue of retention of local facilities and the approach taken when dealing with proposals that could result in the loss of those facilities within communities. There is evidence that shows the decline of local facilities are as a result of various circumstances that might include changing of retail custom, internet sales and speedy deliveries, increased mobility and economies of scale. However, it is also recognised that these facilities can be an important component of maintaining sustainable communities that might provide less tangible benefits, such as welcoming hubs and places where all residents can socialise, meet, rather than becoming isolated in their own homes. The supplementary planning guidance consultation commenced on the 23rd of September 2024 and was endorsed by PSG in June 2025 and proceeded again to Environment and Economy scrutiny. The responses, comments and reasoning in relation to the consultation is provided in Appendix 6 of the report. A comment was made at Environment and Economy in relation to open spaces and whether they would be considered as an asset within the SPG. It was explained that these were dealt with in a separate policy document and therefore not covered within this SPG. A further amendment was accepted at that meeting that would provide a link between the commentary of 6.1 to sections 7 and 8 that required proof of the comments within that section of section 6.1. That is referred to within 112 of this report. I move the recommendation that the retention of local facilities SPG is adopted as SPG and made available for inspection on the Council's website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richard Jones. David, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Just one point of clarification, really, and that is just to explain that it is not within the Council's gift to ensure that local facilities remain open, but it's certainly within the Council's gift to control a change of use of that building if it does close. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Paul Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I thoroughly support this. I think the key thing is for many people, having local facilities like shops or whatever are a key part of the communities in which they go and live. And I think, having been part of the process, I think the key words in the whole report is, and I think it should be emphasised very clearly about what this council is trying to do, but it says quite clearly, it is the council's aim to ensure that all reasonable steps have been made to retain local facilities in an attempt to promote sustainable communities. I think that's a very important point to remember. I think people should see that this council will do all it can, take all those reasonable steps that it can do, and on that basis, I would like to second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. It's been moved by Councillor Richard Jones, seconded by Councillor Paul Johnson. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 11. Councillor Christophin.
Chair, good morning, everybody. Natural Resource Wales, NRW, lead on the proposal to designate a new national park named Glyndŵr National Park in North East Wales. Public engagements were held in 2023, followed by a public consultation in 2024. The Environment Scrutiny Committee and then Cabinet replied in December 2024. In July 25, NRW considered and revised proposals. A statutory public consultation was launched and is open now and ends on December the 8th this year. Recently, the Environment Scrutiny Committee have met, that was the 11th of November, and after a lengthy debate, agreed with the recommendations here before us today. The Council's response to the earlier consultation raised several concerns, including the financial burden associated with the creation of an additional national park, and the need for an immediate review of the Flintshire Local Plan and others. Changes have taken place in response to the 2024 consultation, and these include the reinstatement of the Gronant and Tilacborough Dunes area in Flintshire, and the refining of the boundary, and other aspects. In addition, Welsh Government has clarified that if a new national park is established, it is committed to properly funding it without financially disadvantaging the existing national parks or the constituent local authorities.
However, no details about funding have been shared. Further, members will be mindful that councils and other public bodies are consistently lobbying Welsh Government for additional financial support in order to manage ever-increasing demands on services. It is recognised that the creation of a new national park could have a number of benefits, which include legal safeguards for the protection of natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage, an increase in tourism-related activity, and others. However, again, it should be noted that without appropriate mitigation measures, an increase in visitor numbers could place increased pressure on local infrastructure and the environment. Whilst it has been suggested that a mitigation plan could be implemented, the details and financial cost is unknown at this stage. It is considered that in the absence of any firm plans relating to governance arrangements and associated assurances relating to duplication of resource, the advantages of creating a new national park do not outweigh the reasonably held concerns. There are two recommendations before us today, and I propose those, but I also welcome any questions. Thank you.
David, have you got anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been proposed by Councillor Chris Dolphin, seconded by Councillor Richard Jones. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Agenda item 12, the revenue budget monitoring, month 6. Councillor Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to introduce the revenue budget monitoring report for month 6. My middle name is Mike, no question. Okay. I'm pleased to introduce agenda item 12, the revenue budget monitoring report for month 6. This report gives a clear, evidence-based and transparent view of our current in-year position and what it means for the year ahead. It reflects the disciplined work undertaken across all portfolios as we manage what remains one of the most financially challenging periods in recent memory for local government. Our projected outturn shows an operating deficit of 1.454 million after applying the budget risk reserves, which had absorbed £2 million of service pressures. Without this reserve, the underlying in-year deficit would stand at 3.454 million. This illustrates the scale of the pressures we are managing and the importance of holding strong reserves while they remain available. Reserves don't remove the risks, they just stop the risk becoming a crisis. Movement since the previous month shows a positive 1.946 million, driven by tighter workforce controls, reduced agency spend, vacancy management and strict monitoring of non-essential expenditure. We've also benefited from the 2.109 million Welsh Government grant targeted at demand pressures. This level of grip gives us confidence heading into the final quarter. Our contingency reserve now stands at 2.892 million, above the minimum risk assessed level of 2.5 million. Alongside this, our earmarked reserve totals 16.4 million, although these are heavily committed and cannot be used to offset recurrent pressures. Notably, school balances total about 6.8 million, with variances across the sector reflecting pressures in ALN, staffing costs, PFI contributions. Insurance reserves stand at 1 million, and our workforce transformation and risk reserve support ongoing essential commitments. On efficiencies, 98.7% of the 14.9 million approved efficiency programme is forecast to be delivered, with only 193,000 at risk or undeliverable. Given national inflation, supply chain pressures, this is a significant achievement. Every pound saved through efficiency is a pound that protects frontline services. However, the most significant area of pressure remains within social services, where the overspend reflects increased demand, market fragility, provider capacity issues, and the rising cost of complex care packages. We currently have 36 out-of-county placements, each costing significantly more than internal provision. Children's services have seen a 7% rise in demand compared to last year, and adult services continue to increase in complexity. The biggest pressures in our budget, though, are rooted in people's lives. They're not rooted on a spreadsheet. Inflation remains a defining challenge. Contract renewals show increases between 6.66% and 18%, while energy costs remain 30 to 40% above pre-crisis levels. Food inflation has eased, but high transport costs continue to rise through fuel and compliance requirements. Income risk remains a challenge across planning, car parks, industrial units and commercial waste. Leader and Cabinet, the link between this year's performance and the 26-27 budget cannot be overstated. A smaller deficit this year will directly reduce next year's structural gap. A strong position this year, I have to emphasise, is the first building block of a balanced budget next year. Scrutiny comments from Cross earlier this month were constructive, emphasising the oversight of social services pressures, tracking high-risk efficiencies and monitoring income assumptions. These insights reinforce our current direction. This report shows an organisation responding to financial pressure with maturity, professionalism and determination. Our trajectory is improving, our controls are strong and our forecasting is tightening. I want to thank once again the officers for their hard work and diligence in producing this report. The recommendations are: 1, to note the monthly monitoring position for 25-26 month 6 and the in-year deficit of 1.454 million after using the budget risk reserve. To note the underlying deficit of 3.454 million prior to use of reserve use. 3, to endorse continued controls on vacancies, procurement and non-essential spend and risk management. 4, to note the ongoing pressures in social services and the actions underway. 5, to approve the in-year management actions to minimise the year-end deficit. And 6, to agree that the position informs planning for the 26-27 budget. And I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Have you got anything to add?
No, else, Leader.
Councillor Glyn Banks.
Thank you, Chair. While I know that Welsh Government ministers probably won't be watching this, I'm going to take every opportunity to mention the fact that we still haven't had the Sustainable Waste Management Grant. And it's £742,000. We were told we were getting it, and we really should have had it by now. I'm getting close to Christmas time. The later we get it, the more chance of them turning around and saying, "Why haven't you spent it?" So give us the money now, please. Thank you. Just Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Banks. You make a good point there, because I was at that meeting when they did promises. Councillor Richard Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it's just worth mentioning how demand affects the budget on this council. If you imagine that, for example, the out-of-county placement, if you said there was just a 3% increase on the budget required, that amounts to 690,000, which is the pressure this month. So just on it from a demand level, a 3% increase in out-of-county placements, that actually almost gets you to the point where you're £750,000 over budget, which is really significant. But I think that point for demand needs to be well made. Thank you, Chair.
Point there, Councillor Jones. Right. It's been proposed by Councillor Johnson. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Richard Jones. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 13, the capital programme monitoring, month 6. Councillor Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Capital monitoring programme, month 6, 25 to 26. Leader and Cabinet. I'm pleased to introduce the capital programme monitoring report for month 6. This update provides a clear and detailed assessment of progress across our capital schemes, the financial position for 25-26, and the risks that need continuing monitoring as we plan ahead for 26 to 27. The total capital programme across the council fund and HRA stands at 186 million across the MTFS period. For the current year, the current approved capital programme totals 68.7 million, of which 54.2 million, 79%, is already spent or contractually committed. This level of commitment reflects strong delivery despite persistent inflation and supply chain disruption. The council fund programme totals 43.6 million, with key investments in schools, roads, ICT infrastructure, regeneration and statutory compliance. Roads investment, or highways investment, this year totals 2.7 million, and compliance-led improvements continue at pace across multiple sites. The statutory 1.6 million disabled facilities grant remains on track, supporting independence and helping people to stay safely in their homes. Every capital pound has to work twice as hard in the current climate, in my opinion. Education capital investment this year totals 8.4 million, covering school condition works, safeguarding improvements, digital upgrades and accessibility. Construction inflation remains a risk, with tender inflation price still running at 7 to 10%, affecting contingency levels and delivery profiles. The HRA capital programme totals 27.9 million, with strong delivery across energy efficiency, modernisation, component replacements. 82% of the schemes are now on site or contracted, with further phases progressing through design and procurement. Capital investment is in housing, is an investment in stable lives, warm homes and long-term well-being. Emerging risks remain. Tender returns are showing uplifts of 8 to 10% against official initial estimates. Supply chain challenges continue in steelwork, electrical components and specialist mechanical systems. Contractor capacity is still tight in several sectors. But let's be clear, good capital management isn't about building more, it's about building better, stronger and sustainably. Financing remains stable and borrowing is forecast to remain within approved limits. The capital finance requirement aligns with the assumptions in the capital strategy, and no breaches of prudential indicators are forecast. Capital receipts are projected at 1.2 million, although there is some risk around the timing of asset disposals. Leader in Cabinet, this monitoring report provides a very clear and straight view of progress and pressure. It reinforces that strong delivery this year supports wider MTFS stability into 2026 and 27. Again, I will reiterate the point that staying within capital approvals this year protects next year's revenue position. Once again, I want to thank officers for the clarity of this report, the diligence and professionalism that has gone into it. Despite a demanding financial environment, this programme still remains deliverable, affordable and well governed. And I recommend this report to Cabinet. The recommendations are: 1, to note the overall progress and expenditure of the 25-26 programme up to month 6. 2, to approve the changes and reprofile set out in the report. 3, to note the inflationary supply chain risks and the actions underway to manage them. 4, to confirm continued compliance with the prudential indicators. And 5, to support ongoing close monitoring to protect affordability going to 26-27. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Chris, anything to add? Okay, thank you. Sorry. Agenda item 14, corporate risk register. Councillor Linda Thomas.
Thank you, Leader. The Corporate Risk Register identifies risks which have a significant impact on the Council's ability to deliver both statutory and non-statutory services to residents and businesses within Flintshire, and it's owned by the Chief Officer team and Cabinet. The risks are reviewed monthly, and the Chief Officer team agreed to add the 3 following risks to the Corporate Risk Register, and these have been added in the last 6 months. They are the impact of climate change, waste duty of care code of practice, and the conditions of the highway network. There are 15 risks identified on the register, and I'll try and briefly cover the risks. The first one is the impact of climate change, which, as I've just said, was added to the Corporate Risk Register in April. This risk level has increased from 3 to 9. Since May, reports on the climate change programme have been reported to the Chief Officer's team. In some areas, the programme remains on track. However, in other areas, progress has slipped. The risk level has been increased whilst the governance arrangements are finalised and to reflect the increase in risks the council faces due to severe weather events it may experience in the future. The Waste Duty of Care Code of Practice was added to the register in April, and this is about the Waste Duty of Care Code of Practice, which applies to all council services. The law requires anyone dealing with waste has to keep it safe, make sure it's dealt with responsibly, and only given to businesses who are authorised to take it. Currently, there is no central control process in place for the authority to check compliance and ensure that any onward waste holder or holders have the correct authorisation to take waste and prevent the unauthorised or harmful deposit, treatment or disposal of waste. This risk level remains the same at 15. However, while the risk impact will always remain high, it can be mitigated by taking a council-wide approach to waste management. Condition of the highways network was added to the register in April. The risk is the lack of sustainable investment in the highway network, which could further escalate the deterioration of the highway network. The impact is a growing backlog of repairs, which can increase the risk to public safety, financial liability, and long-term asset resilience. It will also impact our ability to build resilience of the highway network against the climate change and inflationary pressures. This risk level remains the same at 12. A new highway management system is being implemented and will drive improvement to manage performance, enable trend analysis using data. Excuse me. The medium-term financial strategy. This has been discussed and remains high at 20.
Just to save a bit of time,
Yeah.
we've all got all these risks here. I'm sure if we read them, we can ask any questions. If it's all right with you, we can take any questions with it and you can put the recommendation rather than you read through the 115. Bit onerous for you.
Sorry, Leader, I have tried to cut it down, but with all the risks. So if you'd like me to go to the recommendations.
Is everybody happy if you do that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Just go to the recommendations.
Okay. The recommendations are to acknowledge 3 additional risks on the corporate risk register, which are, as I've said, the impact of climate change, waste duty of care code of practice, and condition of highway networks. To review and agree that the mitigating actions for each risk on the corporate risk register are adequate to manage the risk. And number 3, to approve and be assured that the following risks are within the council's risk appetite, can be de-escalated from the corporate risk register and managed at portfolio level. And these 2 are the fraud and prevention and the housing revenue account capital investment. I would move the recommendations.
Formally second. Formally second.
Is that a question? Just a comment, go on then.
I know the cabinet member and I have spoken at length about one of the risks, which is RGV01 mentioned in 108, which seems to be at odds with the risk management framework, but actually it's explained there fully why the target is so high due to outside influences of cyber attack and IT security. So I think that's well explained, but a point of note, and I think the monitoring officer might want to make a comment on that also. Thank you.
Gareth?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it's interesting that we should be sitting here in ULO and talking about world events, but actually the stance that the UK government has taken in relation to Ukraine means that we are now a target by Russian state-sponsored cybercriminals. And we have seen a variety of attacks on public sector bodies throughout the last 12 months. We ourselves experienced an attack earlier, a fairly unsophisticated attack earlier this year. And world events are not distant things. They do have an impact close to home. So for us, although We do a lot, as you know, and you have been very supportive as a cabinet of efforts to ensure that our digital network remains secure. And we try our hardest in relation to that. We don't ever see that risk de-escalating as a result of our own actions, because it's not our own actions that necessarily drive that risk. It's factors far beyond our control that drive that risk. We will do everything we can to mitigate it and to make sure that our systems and our data remain safe, but we are not wholly in control of that risk, which is why it remains high despite your focus and despite the efforts of everyone within the council, whether they be councillor or officer, to keep our data safe.
Thank you, Gareth. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you. And it's just the risk regarding the resource to meet homeless obligations, and just to provide reassurance that we do take a report to scrutiny each committee. And whilst the numbers of people presenting have been going up, the strategies and the extra accommodation that we have brought online, as we've been able to reduce our costs. So it's just to provide reassurance that we do provide updates to the housing scrutiny.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. What's been proposed by Councillor Dolphin?
It's interesting to hear the Chief Governance Officer talk about de-escalation and mitigation, because we can cross that over to the climate change risk that's been added to the register, RPE 46, the impact of climate change, because that's a world event as well, global. But if we think of our friends down in Monmouth who have dealt with something terrible this week, the whole high street basically being flooded, although there was a risk there, and they tried to mitigate, it still wasn't enough. You can't predict what's going to happen, how bad it's going to be sometimes. So something, yeah, that perhaps, well, probably RPE 46 will never come off the risk register. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dolphin. I think you make a good point there. Been moved by Councillor Thomas, seconded by Councillor Jones. Are we all in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 15, council tax base for 26-27. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. This report sets out the council tax base for next year. It might look like a very technical item, but it's actually one of those building blocks for the whole budget. It tells us how many properties we'll be raising council tax from, and that figure directly affects how much income we can rely on when we set the budget in February. Getting the tax base right is about fairness and accuracy. We need to make sure that households are contributing the right amount, not more than they should, and not less than they should either. A fair tax system always starts with an accurate tax base. The tax base reflects new homes that come on stream, the latest numbers of discounts and exemptions, and our updated collection rate. All this follows Welsh Government guidance, so the calculation is sound and consistent. We all know that finances are tight and that residents are feeling the cost of living pressures too. That's why it's important the assumptions we use here are realistic and responsible. Fairness in local taxation, of course, builds trust. Leader and Cabinet, this is a straightforward report. It doesn't change anyone's bill, but it makes sure the foundations for next year's budget are solid. It helps us plan properly, protect services, and treat residents fairly. The recommendations are: 1, to approve the council tax base for 25-26 as set out in the report. 2, to note the assumptions used, new properties, discounts, exemptions, collection rates. 3, support keeping collection assumptions strong and realistic to help the MTFS. And 4, to recommend the approved council tax base to council for formal adoption. I move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Gareth.
Thank you, Leader. As well as working out how many properties we have within the county on which to charge council tax, we also have an assumed collection rate in there, Leader. Now, we are one of the highest performing council tax collection authorities in Wales. We currently stand second in the rankings, so we collect the second highest amount of council tax of all 22 local authorities in Wales. We maintain our position through the diligence of Mr. Barnes's service, and even so, we are seeing a reduction in the amount of council tax that we are able to collect. Partly that's economic circumstances, partly it's social trends around a growing trend, false belief that council tax is consensual, which of course it isn't. But Leader, we have an assumed collection rate there of 98.5%. That is that we will collect nearly 100% of the tax that you set, and we allow only 1.5% for bad debts, which is really important, I think, for residents to understand that if we set out to collect a tax, people aren't getting away with it. Only 1.5% of the tax that you set as councillors is not collected, and that's reflected in our collection rates. You know, we set that estimate based on our collection rates over time. We do, as an authority, collect 98.5% of council tax. So we lose a very small amount to those people that don't pay, which, as Councillor Johnson said, is where that fairness element comes in.
I think we're very lucky with David Barnes, his department, and that they do, you know, exceedingly well in what they collect. So that's very good then. So pass on our congratulations to David and his team, please, Gareth. Okay, Councillor Johnson has moved it. We've got a seconder, Councillor Richard Jones. All in favour? Sorry. Yeah.
Chair, just to not labouring the point too much, but I know that there is an additional resource required within the department to keep those percentages up, and it's really an invest to save item. So when you invest in a person in that service, noting that every 1% of council tax change is about 1.3 million. I think that's something which is worthy of note. Thank you, Chair.
Make a good point there, Councillor Jones. Okay, I've got a seconder. Councillor Richard Jones, all in favour? Carried, thank you. Agenda item 16, council tax policy framework for discretionary. Gareth, are you taking this? Sorry, Paul?
So you hear my voice this morning? Budget one. Okay, John Ryder, Steve. Good, there we go. Leader and Cabinet, this report asks us to approve the updated Section 13 discretionary discounts policy, the part of the council tax system that allows us to help households facing exceptional hardship when all of the reductions have been exhausted. It's one of the most sensitive decisions we have to make because it deals directly with people who are experiencing circumstances that are not within their control. The policy in front of us today is stronger, clearer and more consistent because we incorporated helpful suggestions made by CROSS. Their feedback was constructive and focused on improving clarity, fairness and transparency. They asked us to strengthen the definitions of what exceptional hardship means, set out the evidence requirements more clearly and ensure a more consistent and transparent decision-making process. All of these points are now embedded within the revised policy. Policy now explains hardship in a more accessible way, giving both residents and staff a clear understanding of what circumstances may qualify. It avoids unnecessary complexity and sets out precisely what evidence will be required. I believe very strongly the revised policy is sensible, compassionate and financially responsible. I do thank CROSS for their feedback because it made the document stronger, more transparent and more usable for the people who may need it most. I'm pleased to recommend the updated Section 13 discretionary discounts policy for Cabinet's approval. The recommendations are: 1, to approve the revised Section 13A discretionary council tax discounts policy. 2, to note the strengthened criteria, clear definitions and improved assessment process informed by CROSS. 3, to confirm that decisions will continue to be evidence-based, fair and consistent. And 4, to recommend the approved policy to council for formal adoption.
Councillor Johnson. Gareth?
Thank you, Leader. One very brief comment from me. I talked under the last item about our very high collection rates. We do collect in a sensitive manner, though, and we do. This is the. I talked this the last time on the last item of talking from the head. This is where we talk now from the heart about how we collect in a fair and balanced way to make sure that we don't put people into financial difficulty in terms of how we collect. And this policy is the flip side and the counterbalance to those very high collection rates that we were rightly praising a few moments ago.
Well, that's good news. Okay, any further questions? It's been proposed by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Ted Palmer. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 17, Welsh Government consultation, proposed refinements to the treatment of self-catering properties for local taxes. Councillor Johnson, is this you again?
It's Councillor Johnson's show this morning, Chair. I do apologise. Leader in Cabinet, this item outlines this council's response to the Welsh Government's consultation refining how self-catering properties are treated for local tax purposes. The consultation was launched because the Welsh Government wanted clearer, more enforceable rules that genuinely distinguish genuinely operated holiday businesses from properties used mainly as second homes. Their aim is straightforward: to improve fairness, strengthen the system and ensure that the properties meet the criteria they claim under non-domestic rates. Our response to the consultation reflects that overall aim. It sets out the practical experience we have in Flintshire. We know that many operators here run legitimate year-round businesses that contribute to our local economy. Equally, we know there are cases where the rules are stretched and where the system does not always match reality. The consultation from the Welsh Government was designed to tighten that gap, and our response supports that principle. Cross considered this item in detail, and their comments have strengthened our final response. Consequently, following that, our response supports clearer definitions, better evidential tests, and more transparent criteria. We highlight the importance of maintaining a fair and workable system for legitimate businesses while ensuring that properties that function as second homes contribute properly to local taxation. Fairness means treating real businesses fairly and stopping loose loopholes that place extra pressure on local taxpayers. We also emphasise the need for consistency across Wales. Operators need clarity, not confusion, and councils need rules that are simple enough to administer without unnecessary bureaucracy. We welcome the proposals that reduce ambiguity, strengthen verification, and improve accountability. Leader in Cabinet, this is a balanced and practical response. It supports fairness, backs responsible operators, and strengthens the system for the future. The final version is clearer and stronger thanks to scrutiny's input and reflects both our local experience and wider responsibility for a fair tax system. So I am pleased to commend the report to Cabinet. The recommendations are that Cabinet approves the Council's response to the Welsh Government consultation, that Council notes the strength and content arising from Cross's feedback, that Council endorses the emphasis on fairness, enforcement and clarity, and that Council agrees that the response be submitted to Welsh Government as the Council's formal position. I move the report.
Johnson. Gareth, you anything to add? Okay, anybody got any questions? Have we got a seconder? Councillor Linda Thomas. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 18, the Highways Asset Management Plan. Councillor Ted Palmer.
Good morning, Leader, members and officers. This report covers Flintshire County Council's annual status reports for 24 to 25, along with related updates on mud on roads and draft street cleansing policy. Flintshire County Council fully recognise the critical importance of its highway infrastructure and the role it plays in supporting the delivery of our wider corporate goals. A safe, reliable and well-maintained highway network is essential, not only for residents and business, but for the social and economic well-being of the county as a whole. To support this, the Council's Highway Asset Management Plan sets out our long-term approach to managing all of our key highway assets. This includes carriageways, footways, street lighting, drainage and highway structures. In October 24, Cabinet approved the revised HAM strategy. This updated approach was designed to give the authority a clearer understanding of risks across the major asset group and to present a transparent and evidence-based plan for managing the network within the funding and resources available. A key feature of the revised strategy is the increased use of asset data. This ensures that decisions on investment and maintenance are based on need, condition and risk. In addition, the introduction of the annual status report allows us to track progress against our improvements plans each year and to report openly on the condition of each major highway asset. The report before members today presents the ASR for 24-25 period, the following asset groups: carriageways as detailed in Appendix 5, footways included in Appendix 6, and structures provided in Appendix 7. Each ASR provides an overview of the current condition, highlights the key risks, and sets out the progress made against our planned improvements. Collectively, they provide a comprehensive picture of where we stand this year, the challenges we face, and the priorities we need to address going forward. Alongside the ASRs, the report also includes a briefing note on mud on roads, included in Appendix 8. This follows a request from the Environment and Economy Overview and Scrutiny Committee and summarises the current situation, responsibilities and actions being taken to address concerns around road safety and cleanliness. Finally, the report presents a draft street cleansing policy for members' consideration, which can be found in Appendix 9. The draft policy aims to provide a consistent and transparent framework for how the council manages street cleansing activities, setting clear expectations for levels of service and ensuring resources are targeted where they are most needed. In summary, Chair, the information provided today highlights both our progress and the ongoing challenges in managing a complex and heavily used highway network. The ASRs are an important step forward in helping us with informed decisions, prioritise investments and maintain public confidence in how we manage our vital assets. There are two recommendations. Cabinet support notes and comments on the content of the report and associated documents. 2. Cabinet supports notes and comments on the proposed street cleansing policy included in Appendix 9. I would also like to thank the team for the work they've done, and maybe the Chief Officer for streets you may want to add.
Katie?
Yeah, Bore da, good morning members. Just a bit of feedback from scrutiny. So I've had a note from the facilitator with some of the comments. It was quite a lengthy report I think last Tuesday it was. One of the comments was around the funding, and I think in particular in relation to the local government borrowing initiative funding that we've had from Welsh Government. The committee noted that the funding's welcomed, but did recognise that, you know, although that funding is critical in maintaining the network, it's still not sufficient to maintain a steady state of the current conditions. So, you know, they were quite concerned that it didn't assist with the deteriorating condition of other assets as well. So, particularly because it's limited to just carriageways, structures and footways. There were some comments made around the draft street cleansing policy and in terms of some of the wording, and they wanted some glossary to be included with the terms within it around what constitutes a classified road and an unclassified road. So we agreed to amend that. The other comments were relating to the Geist survey and data, and I think they requested that although we can use survey data, they still valued the importance of the assessments of officers as well, so the area coordinators, and this assurance was provided at the committee. And then finally, there were some comments around fly tipping on unadopted roads and non-council land, but we clarified that obviously this is set out in the legislation within the Environmental Protection Act, so it's not included within the policy. So that was the feedback from scrutiny.
Thank you, Katie. Councillor Christophin.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I was also at the scrutiny meeting, and it was a very long meeting, and this created quite some debate. There was also quite a lot of talk about the investment in our roads. And this cabinet and this council really knows that Flintshire is not funded enough. It's not funded correctly. It hasn't been funded like other councils in Wales for decades now. It's not years, it's decades of underfunding. And one of the things that are underfunded are the investments in our roads. And it says here, at no time in the last 10 years has the level of investment been close to that required to maintain the condition. That's the steady state value. So it's recognised. And the people out there in the county and in government also need to recognise Flintshire is extremely underfunded, not just in highways, but in all departments as well, social services, education, anything you care to mention, not for years, but for decades and decades. And that's why things have deteriorated, not just here, but in other places. We do tremendously well with the money we're allocated to stretch it as far as we do. But we have to stretch it a lot further than others do, a lot further than Denbighshire do, for instance. But when there's money guaranteed for a national park at some stage, and as much as you want, but there's no figures with it, we know it's millions, but how many millions, absolutely no idea. If that money isn't spent on the national park, where's it going? Because Flintshire still wants, we want some money here in Flintshire. And so I sympathise with the chief officer, and I sympathise with those people that have unadopted roads, because you're going to have to wait, was it 247 years for that to be resurfaced? It's written down, so I'm not making it up. Nearly over 2,500 repairs were completed last year, and a lot of people say, well, they weren't good enough either. But that's because of the money situation. It all comes back to money, and the government needs to recognise, and the people need to recognise, that's the reason the job either doesn't get done properly or doesn't get done at all. Thank you.
Councillor Dolphin, you do make a good point there, and tell the truth. I'll say that. And we are doing our damnedest to talk. I mean, we're going down on Thursday to see if we can get more money out of them, but it's not easy. Councillor Rich Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I know I've spoken to the cabinet member in relation to this. There was one other issue which was mentioned, which was the Flintshire Bridge, which is a particular of particular interest to us all, isn't it? Because it cost us money over the next 10 years. It's going to cost around about 1.8 million of that grant. And so that's treated differently than a lot of other bridges in Wales, a lot of other bridges in North Wales, which are treated as ours is something we have to pay for ourselves when others are supported by Welsh Government. So I think that's possibly something that we should consider again. And I don't know whether the cabinet member is wanting to make a point here, but I think that's an unfair pressure on us as a council.
Councillor Ted Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points, Councillor Dolphin. I think the phrase "not repaired correctly" is an injustice. I think it's prepared in to a standard that we can afford to do. I don't think it's not been done incorrectly. Councillor Jones' comments on the bridge, it is a risk going forward. I think it's going to be a bigger risk going forward. So I would probably seek support from the Cabinet to write a letter to the relevant organisation and lobby for either money or them to take over it as a trunk road. This is not just a bridge. If it's not just a bridge, though, if you go along all the way to Gronant, I can't remember the name of the thing that's in there. I think it's called AirNet or something. And because of that going from where it goes to Lacra Way or Gronant Way, there's more repairs on that road needed because of that being there. So, you know, and I think that's something we need to highlight in the letter. It's not just a bridge, it's the whole road along the A548.
Thank you. Well, there's a recommendation there from Councillor Ted Palmer. Are we all in favour that we write? Yeah, all in favour? Right. Regarding the report, Councillor Ted Palmer, you've moved it. Do we have a seconder for the report? Yeah, all in favour? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, Glyn seconded. We've got that. Agenda item 19, Flintshire Bus franchise. Councillor Glyn Banks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the bus franchise Flintshire Bus franchise network. And it does say sign off, but to be honest, I don't know if that's the right word because it's just it's a moving forward process. I probably should have spotted that before, to be honest. But anyway, right. In March 2022, Welsh Government published its white paper, One Network, One Timetable, One Ticket, setting out proposals to improve bus network across Wales to attract more people to use the buses. Welsh Government wants to build a simpler bus network which is linked in with the rest of public transport in Wales and easy to navigate on, in the brackets, One Network, with coordinated timetables which are easy to use and allow the connection across public transport in Wales with one timetable, and simpler ticketing which enables travel across public transport in Wales with affordable and consistent fares, again on one ticket. And following strong public support, franchising was confirmed as the preferred model, with central coordination of routes, timetables, fares and standards. Legislation is expected round about now in 2025, with rollout in North Wales planned for 2028. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with an update on the development of the proposals for a future franchise bus network. It seeks support to advance to the next phase, which includes detailed planning and the commencement of stakeholder and public engagement activities. But before I read the recommendations, for myself, it's a bit aspirational, this is, and for myself, the holy grail would be for us would be something like the B network in Greater Manchester, but tailored to suit the mainly rural North Wales network. So that's what we're hoping for. So this report takes us to the next steps, which are the two recommendations. One, Cabinet supports the request to advance to detailed planning and stakeholder engagement. And two, that Cabinet supports the process of future engagement with members. Thank you, Chair. Over to the Chief Officer.
Katie?
Yeah, thank you. So as explained, this is just a report advising of the process that's being followed by Transport for Wales and Welsh Government, and it seeks to commence the public engagement, which is planned for spring 2026. There was some feedback from scrutiny, so there's several points they asked to be raised. They asked for assurance around what influence we have as a council in terms of decisions around routes, timetables, fares, and the service quality standards, which will be made centrally in the future by Welsh Government and Transport for Wales. So there was quite a lot of assurance sought around that. They asked about how local needs would be captured, so that, the most important, so, we could prioritise the most important service for communities. They also were advised that the report was seeking support to start the consultation of stakeholder engagement once it was approved by Cabinet. So we did clarify that. Comments were made around the need for frequent, clean buses with reasonable fares to service a lot of areas, particularly those around areas of the county with limited services presently. I outlined that 3 options are being considered. So there's the base position, which reflects the current network as it is now, but better coordination of services. The investment zone funding, which is an improvement on the base position, utilising the investment zone funding. And then there's an aspirational position, which is a bit more ambitious with additional routes. And we recognise that that would need additional funding. Following quite a bit of debate in the room, the committee asked for an additional recommendation to be included, which needs to be considered by Cabinet, I believe. So I'll read out the additional recommendation that scrutiny asked to be included, which was the 3rd recommendation, that the committee supports the aspirational position, but also requests that Welsh Government utilises this opportunity to allow possible nationalisation of our bus network by allowing local authorities to run their own bus company, allowing money to stay within our communities and reducing profits being drained from Wales. So that's the wording they supplied. Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Councillor Bessie Jones.
Yeah, a couple of things, Chair. On that last 3rd recommendation, is it not very similar, if not exactly the same as the second bullet point in 104 that's referred to. And just whilst the Chief Officer is checking that, I think there's been a change, hasn't it, since the beginning to where we are now with Welsh Government and their aspiration for this service, which appears to allow the package routes to support local companies, local SMEs, which is important, not just the bigger entities that would be able to quote on those larger transport routes. So I think that's important from a local point of view, and that's to be welcomed from Welsh Government. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I very much welcome the report and the next steps that have to be taken. I do feel in all the discussions about franchising that Flintshire is in a very unique position compared to most other Welsh counties. For us, one of the key places which is an economic driver is the city of Chester, and there's so much. We are right next to it. We use its services, and many people I know in Chester use our services very, very strongly. So just as we're going forward with this, while we're talking bus franchising and how that's going to work, I think this council should send a strong message that the bus franchising proposals that are going to be implemented within Flintshire have to be done in collaboration, in conversation with our neighbouring councils within England, those being Cheshire West in particular, and perhaps the Wirral. We're looking here about having investment zones, and we have the very powerful Deeside industrial area. We're all committed to getting better bus services, but those bus services are only going to, those economic hubs that we have are only going to be the places that we want them to be if we can ensure that public transport that brings people into those areas, and in fact integrates it within that whole economic area, are recognised. So just a note for me to say, when bus franchising takes place in North East Wales, it's got to remember that the border is one which people are crossing over day to day, and in Flintshire we even know you literally cross the road and you can find yourself in a different country. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I think you make some good points there. Katie?
Yeah, so I'll come back in on Councillor Richard Jones's question around the additional recommendation from scrutiny. I think the purpose, the whole purpose of franchising across Wales is to try and re-regulate the bus industry after it was after deregulation. I think it was late 1980s. So the whole purpose of it is to take back the control, and they're trying, they are seeking to remove some of the restrictions on local authorities around being able to operate their own bus companies, known as municipal bus companies. So the additional recommendation is actually what the legislation is all about. So they have reflected that. I think that's what we are seeking to address. I originally did express some concerns around the impact on smaller bus operators, particularly in North Wales. So, we've got a lot of family operated coach companies and bus companies, that would have struggled to compete against the multinationals. But I think the way they're proposing to move forward, they've taken account of that. And quite rightly, as Councillor Johnson mentions, we're a cross-border authority with, services don't just stop at the boundary. They do run into England. So we are working quite closely with Mersey Alliance and other partners as well, to make sure that that's factored into the changes that are coming. So hopefully that addresses the questions.
Thank you, Katie, and I agree totally with you on that one. I mean, from my own ward, getting a bus from Llanfynydd to Chester, they were talking about stopping in Kinnerton and then getting on a bus from Chester to go all the way back into Chester. Which is absolutely ridiculous. So yeah, so we welcome the moves that we are. So any further questions on this one? Councillor?
The third recommendation, I don't think there's any harm in putting that in there then, but it appears it's been addressed in 104. But I mean, if the cabinet member's happy, I'm happy to second it to be included.
It was, to be fair, it was asked for by the Environment Committee, and we were quite happy with it, so we're happy to roll with the 3. Thank you, Chair.
Second.
Second it. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 20. The Audit Wales report. Audit Wales conducted an audit into the council partnership arrangements. Specifically, Audit Wales examined if the council had proper arrangements in place to provide effective oversight of the partnership it is involved in. Audit Wales selected 2 partnerships on which to focus the audit: the Public Service Board and the Community Safety Partnership. The report presents Audit Wales oversight of partnerships report prepared following the audit, which includes 2 recommendations. Also presented is the management response form drafted to include actions the council will take to address the recommendations made by Audit Wales. I found that a bit strange, really, because they're saying recommendations. How have they audited it if they don't know what the recommendations are? You know, so I think Councillor Richard Jones has got something to say on that one. Yeah, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's worth stressing again that Audit Wales identified those two partnerships for consideration. And as the leader has already said, the Public Service Board and Community Safety Partnership were identified by Audit Wales. The report recognises that the council has strengthened its strategic intent for partnerships, and that's evidenced in the council plan and the leadership support it receives. It identifies the need to establish a proportionate, consistent approach in the form of a partnership framework. And I think that's one of the points there, that we do have a consistent approach where they will come back to scrutiny, but we don't measure them against each other so that we can be assured of performance. And I think that's one of the points that's made. I think the 2 recommendations on page 516 within the report from Audit Wales, one being that they require us to have a definition of partnerships. We have a simple definition, but you would have imagined that if they've audited us on this item, that they would have that definition nationally, and that would be something which they could have provided. So, yeah, I think that's the point. The consistent approach and the comments within the management response before us today, where value for money isn't necessarily about finance, it's about the valuation of strategic outcomes, which are equally important as a measure of success. So I'm happy to move the recommendations or second the recommendations as ever the leader requires on page 505, that the Cabinet consider the outcomes of the recommendation audit report, overview of the partnerships report, and that we endorse the management response and proposed actions to address the recommendations made by Audit Wales. I'm happy to move it if you require that, leader.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I'm happy to do it, but I'll just bring Gareth in.
Thank you, leader. As Councillor Jones has said, we have a great many partnerships that we know work well, and members will see that they report on a regular basis to yourselves to say what they have done in typically the preceding 12 months. And indeed, when this item went to Corporate Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee last week, we had 2 Assistant Chief Fire Officers in from the North Wales Fire Authority, Fire and Rescue Authority, talking about exactly that, how they, as a fellow public sector partnership to whom we nominate councillors, work and the work that they've done on behalf of our residents and working in conjunction with ourselves. We don't have a list, though, of partnerships, so we can't check that everyone has reported in that way every year. And that is part of the recommendation. We need, so that we have that consistency of reporting. In order to have a list, we need to have a definition of what goes on that list. And to be fair to Audit Wales, I think they're allowing us some local discretion as to what we want to put onto that list, to reflect the fact that there are different types of partnerships across Wales. So we choose what we want to put onto that list. At the moment, the working definition that we have is where we work with any other body or person to deliver council functions. So we're not just talking about information sharing networks, it's where we're delivering functions and where we're not doing that on a commercial basis. So we let a contract. We're talking about Park Adfair later on the agenda. We let a contract to them. That's done on a commercial basis. Whilst we work closely with them and we work in a very friendly manner with them, we are not defining that as a partnership. That is a commercial contract. By contrast, the CSP and the PSP that were the focus of the report from Audit Wales very much going to be a partnership, because there we are collaborating with fellow members of the public sector to see how we can more effectively utilise our function, exercise our functions together. So it's about, and then because again, as Councillor Jones has said, we're not a commercial organisation. Part of that reporting framework will be, what are we trying to achieve by this partnership? Have we achieved that each year? So are you achieving your political aims? And that's where Audit Wales come in when they talk about value for money. Are you achieving your political aims from your participation in that partnership? Because it might not be, we're not, as I said, we're not a commercial body. So your political aims are important, and knowing that the time and effort you and officers spend on those partnerships achieve those aims is an important point to report back each year.
Thank you, Gareth. Councillor Glimbanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick point. On the recommendations, I see it as sort of as positive, because they're giving us an opportunity to blow our own trumpet in a way, aren't they? Or they're telling us to blow our own trumpet a bit more, which has got to be a good thing, because we are doing what they're asking, and maybe we could be better at getting out there what we do. Possibly that's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an excellent report, and congratulations to the department for that. So I'm moving it. Councillor Richard Jones has seconded it. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 21, the Care Inspectorate Wales inspection activities. Christine?
Diolch. Bore da, good morning everybody. Between June and August 2025, Care Inspectorate Wales carried out focused inspection activity across Flintshire and across our county council social care functions. This included inspections of, I can't see, the sun's in my eyes, I'm sorry, I have to move that way a little bit. This included inspections of children's social care, children's residential care, and in-house domiciliary services for adults. CIW, Care Inspectorate Wales, are the independent regulator of social care and childcare in Wales. They regulate social care and early years services using the regulations and national minimum standards set out by Welsh Government through the Social Service and Wellbeing Wales Act 2014. The Regulation and Inspection of Social Care Wales Act 2016, which is RISCA, which is the inspection framework, outlines CIW's approach to inspecting care home and domiciliary support services. All the information is enclosed in the report, which is hopefully everybody's read, and all the key findings of the inspections are in that report. So I move this report and just hand over to our Chief Officer, Craig, for any more comments. Thank you, Sharon, for closing those.
Thank you, Christine. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. The report, and most importantly, I would say the action plan, was presented to Health and Social Services Overview Scrutiny Committee, where the committee really looked and drilled down on the action that we were taking in response to the inspection. I think there was recognition that there are some immediate actions that we've put into place that relate to our service offer, consistency of practice and consistent adherence to Wales safeguarding policies and procedures. But also there are actions that will be more long-term for us to achieve from a CIW perspective. So that is around how we work continuously with housing and build on the work that we've got, focusing on accommodation offers for our care leavers, replacing our existing Paris IT system, and how we reduce reliance in children's services on agency social workers. That there's some big things that will need consistent action. Scrutiny were content with the action plan and the work that we're taking forward. Scrutiny did ask that the recommendation in the report was changed, and I apologise, it hasn't been changed in the report that's presented to you today. What Scrutiny asked for is that the recommendation reads, the committee commends the work of the portfolio's leadership, practitioners and staff, and as reflected and endorsed by this CIW report. This report is going to Governance and Audit Committee on the 24th of November, and I can confirm that that recommendation has been amended for that report, but for some reason it was omitted in the report to you today, so apologies.
Thank you, Craig. As long as that amendment takes place, I don't think we've got a problem with that. Any questions? Councillor Banks.
Not really a question, Chair, just highlighting some of the comments that were made by the Inspectorate. Positive culture, strong emphasis on workforce development, well-supported workforce, and it goes on and on. It's very good. Thank you, Craig.
Okay, Councillor Christine Jones, are you moving it?
Diolch. Thank you for those comments, Councillor Banks. We are really proud of the work that our teams do, and that it's recognised. I move the recommendation that Cabinet endorse the findings identified by CIW, noting the positive reflection of service provision.
Thank you. You've got a seconder. Councillor Linda Thomas. That was the one that was said.
I think that's the one.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Jones meant to repeat that, wasn't it? The one that mentioned by Craig.
Yeah, as long as that's agreed, that what Craig put forward and it's going to governance and audit. Thank you.
Very good, Councillor Jones. Okay, I've got a proposal and a seconder. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Moving on. Agenda item 22, update on the unpaid carers service in Flintshire. Councillor Christine Jones.
Deal. The purpose of this report is to provide members with an update on unpaid carer services in Flintshire, including the progress on recommissioning contracts from April 2025 onwards, findings from the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales own initiative investigation, and developments at the Newkiss Carers Centre in Mould. Flintshire has 18,000 unpaid carers, the highest recorded number in North Wales. Carers contribute significantly to the local economy and reduce pressure on health and social care services. Welsh Government estimates unpaid carers provide care worth 8.1 billion annually. That's an awful lot of money, 8.1 billion pounds annually, compared to 2 billion spent on social care by local authorities. Under the Social Services and Wellbeing Act 2014, the Council has a responsibility to identify carers and assess their needs, provide support and advocacy, focused support, review carers' assessments annually or when circumstances change, and ensure carers have equal rights to support as those they care for. Following a full procurement exercise, contracts for the provision of a range of services to meet carers' needs in line with these responsibilities were awarded from April 2025, 5 years. The providers who are providing the range of support are Newkiss, the Adult Carers Gateway, Respite, Training, Young Carers and CHC support, Daffodils, who's the support for carers of children and young people with disabilities or mental health needs, Neurotherapy Centre, support for carers of individuals with neurological conditions, and transition was smooth with positive feedback from all the carers. Flintshire was one of 4 councils reviewed by the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. Flintshire was noted to be demonstrating good practice in assessing carers' needs, with some minor recommendations made relating to amendments to assessment forms and fact sheets, staff training on carers' rights, improved equality data collection, and strengthened collaboration with health services. Flintshire has complied with all but one recommendation, where we, along with some other local authorities, have taken a view that our current approach to sharing outcomes with carers is the most effective and pragmatic approach to take. The report also provides an update on the relocation of Newkiss to Mould, which is the former Barclays Bank and it's along the High Street, funded by Welsh Government's Transforming Towns placemaking grant. Carers are able to attend drop-ins, get peer support, wellbeing activities, and links with local businesses. This relocation is demonstrating some real impact, with 2,000 walk-ins per month, over 100 events held in the summer of 2025, and 600 plus attendances by anybody who wants to go there, really. Carers, the people who use our services, people come in off the street, have a look at the shop there. Everybody should visit because it really is a fantastic centre. So I move the report and just hand over to Craig for any further comments.
Craig?
Yeah, I would just want to commend and thank all the carers in Flintshire who do an incredible job in social services, and I'm sure across the council we really recognise and value the work that they do in supporting thousands of people in our communities. I'd also like to thank the range of third sector organisations that are really proactive here in Flintshire in supporting carers. I have 2 asks of Cabinet. First, if you get a chance, please visit the Newkiss Centre on Mould High Street. It's a fantastic resource that's available for us. And secondly, today at 1:30, if you're still around in the canteen upstairs, people will be around as part of Carers Week explaining the offer that we provide to carers. So if you get a chance, it's a way to informally find out more about those services. Thank you.
Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Having gone through the reports, I noticed that there are 590 young carers in the county, which represents a 500% increase since 2019. I'm just wondering, given that huge increase, if the Chief Officer or the Cabinet member could perhaps explain to us, because I know that's a very young carers under the age of 18, etc., what this kind of provision we do and what support we give to that very, very vulnerable group of people, very, very dedicated, very, very strong group of people, I should also add. Thank you.
So I think the first thing that we'd need to acknowledge is that's 590 known carers, young carers. There are more young carers that are hidden and out there, and our job is to continuously trying to reach out to them and ensure that if they need support, information and advice, our job is to continuously do that. There are 2 areas that I would say we work proactively. One is through schools and with schools in identifying young carers and thinking about how we can support them through information, advice and assistance in their role, and understanding the impact that that has potentially on their education. So there's a lot of work that happens with schools, and also Newkiss that have been mentioned have a specific project for young carers. And it very much ranges because no 2 people are the same or in the same situation, but we take a very approach that assesses and understands what's important to them, what support they need, Sometimes that's through collective groups where young carers get together and basically have an opportunity to enjoy their youth and childhood and have a break from that caring role and responsibility. And other times it's very practical help and support they will give, but it's very much aligned to individual, what matters conversations and the needs of that young carer.
Councillor Christoffin.
Just concerning Newcastle, the leader and I visited there with the First Minister earlier in the year because the regeneration team, so this is a really good cross-council working together, collaboration, applied and helped Newcastle apply for the premises, which is the old Barclays Bank in Mold High Street, a part of regeneration. So yeah, and it was tremendous to see the volunteers there that were ex-users of the operation. So it was a truly good place to go and visit, and in a prime position. Thank you.
Yeah, I concur with that. It was an interesting visit there, and it's well worth the visit. Councillor Glynbanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was pretty much going to say what you said yourself, Craig, because the numbers here are staggering, aren't they? You know, how many people there is, and you know, it is right that we pay tribute to all them people. What is important here is that this is for people to show they're not alone, and that, you know, that's what it is. It's a bit of a link there for people. You're not in it by yourself. Flintshire and Newcastle are there to help along with whatever people can. I don't know whether this could ever happen, but I would love to see something like this rolled out when the Connect goes all round. It would be lovely if we could do things like this through the communities as we do. It would be, I think that would be very nice. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Richard Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's just worth mentioning the benefit of doing this for people to stay at home independently, because that's one of the big benefits. You know, people who are able to stay at home independently, that's a real benefit for them and the service and everybody else. So I think that's one of the points here that should be, you know, amplified really when you thank them. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've got the recommendations, Councillor Chris Jones. For you.
Thank you, Dale. Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you as well to all our carers, adult carers and our young carers, who are absolutely amazing. I mean, they've got their own childhood to, you know, consider. They go to school and then they come home and they care for the relative or friends or whoever they are caring for. And they're absolutely amazing, and they're so strong and they're so resilient. And New Kiss really do support them. There's a couple of workshops at the back of the New Kiss building where the shop is, where they can do artwork and crafts and just have a get together with their friends. And it really is a fabulous facility. And if you watch Children in Need last Friday, there was emphasis on young carers on that programme as well. It was nice for them to be recognised, because people don't realise we have 590 plus children out there who do care for relatives and for friends, and trying to be, you know, happy teenagers. I mean, a lot of them can be as young as 5. You know, there's some very, very young carers out there. So we do need to recognise and we do need to give them our thanks. I've got 3 recommendations. 1, that Cabinet acknowledge the update on the process of recommissioning unpaid carer services. 2, the Cabinet acknowledge the outcome of the PSOW's own initiative investigation into carer services and the progress made against the resulting action plan. And 3, the Cabinet acknowledge the positive work underway with New Kiss to develop our unpaid carer services and the Carers Centre as a hub for unpaid carers in Flintshire. I formally move.
Thank you, Councillor Christine Jones. I've got a seconder. Councillor Linda Thomas. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item 23, report back from the call in for the decision Sustainable Communities for the Learning Programme. Councillor Marad Eastwood.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Can you hear me all right? I've had to put my headphones on.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Lovely, thank you for that. So as you're all aware, a decision of the Cabinet, record number 6 of 4486, the Sustainable Communities for Learning Programme proposal to modernise the Catholic school estate, was called in. The call-in meeting of the Education, Youth and Culture Overview and Scrutiny Committee was held on 6 November 2025. And then, having considered the decision, and it was about a 5-hour-long meeting, so it was a thorough discussion, the committee chose option 2, that the explanation be accepted but not endorsed by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, meaning that the decision could be implemented. I move the recommendation that Cabinet notes the decision of the Education, Youth and Culture Overview and Scrutiny Committee call a meeting regarding record number 6 of 4486. Diolch.
Right, Councillor Eastwood has proposed it. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Ted Palmer, all in favour? Carried, thank you. Yeah, we need to exclude the press and public now. Have I got a proposer? Councillor Ted Palmer, seconder. Councillor Lynn Thomas, all in favour? That's carried.
So just if you could wait a moment, Chair, till the recording stops.
Yeah.